Let's go ahead and take a look at a couple other ways that we can conditionally add style sheets. I'm going to jump back to my editor. And let's go ahead and undo the uncommenting of this example. I just click Control-Z in order to add these slash stars back in around the example. And now let's go ahead and remove the slash stars around the second example. Okay, and go ahead and save it. Now in this one, what we're doing is testing for a particular path. So when we go to a page that has a certain path, we want to make sure to include a style sheet. This kind of condition is particularly useful if we're using directories and paths in order to separate out our site into particular sections. So for example, we might have a media section of the site where every path on it begins with media slash, and we can use that convention to include a style sheet or include a JavaScript file. In this case, we're just including a style sheet. This particular example is a little more complex because we're demonstrating what we would do if we needed to work with user-supplied settings. So for example, if we wanted to add a settings to our theme settings page that allows the user to select a different style sheet to use for a particular set of paths, we would use a script that would look a lot like this. Now if we just need to add a style sheet or a JavaScript file conditionally based on the path and we're not dealing with settings, we could simplify this script quite a bit. All we would need is this function right here, Drupal match path, and it takes as its first parameter the path of the current page, which we can get through getQ. Now if you remember from some of the previous videos, the path to the page is passed through a get parameter, getQ, and we can use that to check what the base original URL is for the current page or the original path. And as a second parameter, we're going to pass a set of matches. And if you look up here, we're creating an example of possible paths we could match against. Now you can use the full path, or you can use an asterisk to indicate a wildcard, or anything can fill in that space. And then the front page is also a little bit of a different structure. It uses opening and closing brackets around front in order to delineate that. So here we're checking for any node page, and we know it's a node page because the original path to any node is node slash and then the node ID. And so we're using an asterisk here to indicate that this number could be anything. And in fact, this could include additional slashes and additional parameters inside the URL, and it will match this as well. Note here that we're separating out potential matches with a new line character, which is a backslash and an N. And in order for this to work, we need to wrap our variable within double quotes. Now this is mimicking what we would normally see in a settings page where we would put a new path on a new line. And this would be interpreted in a variable as a new line character. So we're just creating that manually here inside of these double quotes in order to separate out our different options. So we just take this getQ, pass it as a path, we take a set of matches and pass it to the matches, and then Drupal match path will return either true or false depending on whether it's a match. And we can use that as a condition to decide whether to take the next step, which in our current example is to add a style sheet. Now we're going to extend this just a little bit. That's the simple version, but we're extending it to deal with a variety of different settings for this matches. And one of the things that we need to deal with is the concept of path aliases. Some paths contain aliases. For example, most node pages on a Drupal site aren't going to be accessed going to node slash and then the number of the node. There's going to be an alias that's based off of, say, the node title. And we need to check against those as well. So while we need to check against getQ, which is the original path for our particular page, we also need to check against the alias, which we can get with the function Drupal getPathAlias right here. So first we're setting the matches that we're going to check against. We're grabbing the alias, which we're saving in the path variable. And then we use Drupal match path in order to check whether our alias matches any of the matches that we defined up here. If our alias is different than our original path, we want to go ahead and check against the original path as well. If not, we want to skip that process because it's just going to consume some server resources. So we're checking to see if the alias matches the original path, and if it doesn't, then we're going to go ahead and run this Drupal match path again. But this time what we're doing is returning a variable called page match, which will check this one here where we match the alias, and it will check to see if we match the original path too, and if either one of these returns true, then it will return true for page match here. So we're taking this original one, passing it here, we're doing a check against the original path here, and if either of them are true, we're going to return true for page match. And finally, we're going to check against that variable to see if we want to take the next step, which is adding our CSS file, just like we did in the previous example. Okay, let's go ahead and save this. Now, when we're checking to see if this is running properly, we're going to look for any node pages or the front page and make sure that our style sheet is being added. So we're looking for that yellow background on those pages in particular. Let's go ahead and jump to the browser. And let's go ahead and start at the home page. I'm going to go ahead and click the logo. And you see here we have our yellow background, so that's working well. I'm going to go ahead and go to a node page by clicking on this title on the home page right here. And we have our yellow background as well on the title here. Okay, now let's go to some other page. Let's go ahead and go to the My Account page. Now we see here this would normally be where we'd have our yellow background, but we don't see it. So this means that our style sheet is not being added for this page, which is exactly what we're looking for. Let's go ahead and try one more example. I'm going to jump back to the editor. And let's go ahead and re-comment out our previous example. I'm just going to click Control-Z until we get our comments back around our example here. You see here we have a /* and a */. And let's go ahead and uncomment out the last example right here at the bottom. Okay, in this one what we're doing is testing for a particular user role. So we're going to check against the role anonymous user, so this is a user that is not currently logged in. What we're going to do is check if the role is inside of the user roles array. Now notice that this user is in the variables array that gets passed to our preprocess function up here, and that this is an object and we're looking for the roles element inside of this object. If this role exists and we're using a function, a PHP function called inArray to check if it exists, we're going to go ahead and add this JavaScript file. Now this JavaScript file was used in a previous example to demonstrate including the JavaScript file on every page. And all it does is send an alert to the page that just alerts us to the fact that the JavaScript file has been included. Notice that we're using a function called Drupal add.js. This has a very similar structure to Drupal add CSS. We simply pass it the path to the JavaScript file that we want to include. And this bat.js file is one that we used in a previous example in order to demonstrate including the JavaScript file through the .info file. And all it does is send up an alert to the browser to let us know that the file has been included. So when we enable it, we should just see an alert on the pages that match this particular condition. Let's go ahead and save this and jump back to the browser. And we're going to go ahead and refresh a page. Now we didn't see any alert here, and that's because we're currently logged in. So I'm going to jump to another browser. I have Safari open here. And I'm going to go ahead and refresh this page that's currently on our test site. And we see that we have our alert showing up here. I'm a JavaScript file being included. So this works right.